All right. Good morning, everybody. It's still morning, at least here in the central time zone. Tara here with a Wifey Wake Up podcast. And I thought today I would do my makeup. Usually it's the Wifey Wake Up No Makeup podcast. But I just took my time this morning and it was so glorious. I was supposed to go down to a local farm this morning with my husband and my in-laws, and it's a trip that we make on a good number of weekends in the summer, pick up berries, just have a nice outing. And it's a lovely way to spend time together. But I woke up with a pretty good sinus infection feeling and just achy. And I told my husband, I just feel like I need a day at home, not to try to cram more in the day. And fortunately, he's very wonderful. And he's like, sure. And even though I'm missing out, I'm sure, on a lot of fun with them, it has just been absolutely amazing to be here this morning and to prepare today's podcast with some more time, with some more space. And it's just been absolutely wonderful. Before we get started here, if you please like, comment, subscribe, share this with a friend that you think this could be especially helpful for them today. And it really helps the channel. It helps me know also what is resonating with you. And I really appreciate it. Also, I'm broadcasting to more channels today. Usually this only goes to Wifey School, but this is such a broad topic that I think touches us all in some way. I decided to share it more broadly on my Tara Bachman channels as well. All right, so let's get into it. I had totally a different topic planned as I started writing this out, and this is just how this works. And so the topic for today is how I learned to love again. And this is actually not based on a breakup or breakups in dating and relationships in that way, but in other relationships. And I'm the first to say that I am not about competing for who has the worst story in experiencing trauma. I think so many people have experienced trauma, and we definitely don't need to be in competition about whose trauma has been worse. I think we all experience it in one way or another. And so I wanted to share this, how I learned to love again. I think a lot of people experience trauma when it comes to dating relationships and married relationships. And I think to a large extent, it's all really similar, and we can all learn from each other and how we get through it. So how I learned to love again. Well, first of all, it kind of snuck up on me. I didn't really know that I was in a not so loving state. It was creeping up on me over time. And so when you hear how I learned to love again, if your mind and your heart is just at a state where you know that love is the answer, and you know that the answer is to show love, to speak love, and to be love, but you just can't, like that love tank is just lacking, this is especially for you. And especially if you're thinking, I just can't, it's not in me. Even if I wanted to, my heart is like a sponge that's all dried up. Just a moment here. It's all dried up. There's nothing to give, or, like that squeezed orange that there's just no juice left in it. This is especially for you. If you're like, my tank is absolutely empty, even if I wanted to give more love, I just can't. And this is especially for you, because I've been there and I've been coming out of this for a couple of years. And I just want to put this out there for those who need it as well. So to start out, a couple of years ago, I was really in a very burnout stage. And it's one of those things that you don't really know that you're in it until you're in it. And usually when you get there, there's no quick way out. So for me, for example, I had been building my business for the previous 4 or 5 years. And it was during the pandemic. And for our business in particular, which is a health and wellness business, online herbal education, it was prime time. And so the sun was shining. I'm like, okay, I'm going to make this hay while the sun is shining. And it was wonderful. And I worked myself fanatically. And it was great, but I also worked my state to the point where the business was too big for me to handle alone. And at the same time, I was too busy to do any interviews and hiring and then even training on top of that. So I had to figure out a way around that. But that was situation number one. Then a couple of years later, I was already dealing with that for a couple of years, right? We all remember that time, right? And then shortly after that, I had two contractors around the same time actually accuse me of stealing in one way or another, which is totally antithetical to how I am, my values and way of being. So I'm saying it simply here, but it was really a deep blow to my emotions. And then also work-wise, having to sever the ties with them, there was a tremendous amount of work that had to happen along with that as well. And so not only was it emotionally exhausting, it was financially and energetically exhausting on top of that. And that was just on the heels of, fortunately, by then I had hired a couple of people to help, but it was still very, very intense. And then in that same time, my husband experienced a life-threatening condition, and it's really been the last couple of years. It's taking him a good couple of years to even start feeling, like he said, normal again. And so literally during that time, I was at the hospital with him, or he was recovering on the couch. And it was just a tremendously difficult time, emotionally, physically, and all the above. And it was so much so, I say all that because you probably relate to that in your own way. And it's just like things are piled up so high and you don't even really have an option to get out. You're like, yeah, that sounds great, Tara. I'm sure you're going to share something, but I don't even know how I can get out of this. And sometimes it is just a matter of time. So I just know I'm very realistic when it comes to these things as well. But that was my situation in a quick nutshell. But I didn't really know how bad off I was. When you're so hyper focused on what you're doing and you just have to take care of stuff, it's not even that you're focused. It's just life. It's what's happening, that I didn't know how bad off I was. And I was just taking care of business in life and literally in business. But really what caught my attention is when I noticed myself becoming irritated by the people that I love. And there's one person in particular who is just absolutely wonderful to me always, without any exception, always loving, and even especially when she was doing more loving, caring kind of things towards me, or just being herself, we all have these little quirks and stuff. And even just when she was being herself, it would irritate me. And I told my husband about this. It took me a while to even kind of admit it to myself, but I told my husband about this. And I said, there's something I've really got to fix about myself, because this is not right. It does not feel good. First of all, it didn't feel good anyways. My heart was already just so tense, so frustrated, so much anger built up. But I couldn't let it out, right? It was like, I still had to take care of business. I had to do stuff in life. And so it's not that I could or would or even wanted to take it out or have it come out, but it was festering inside of me, and it just made it worse and worse. It's kind of like any fumes that were left, like if love were a fuel, any last bit of that love would just be like consumed. When a fire is so hot that any bit of fuel, anything that it consumes, it just like devours up really quickly. That's what it was like. And so I couldn't even like build up any more love stamina, any loving feelings that came in my direction. It was like it was just consumed and just even kind of like, when a fire just kind of goes and it does a sudden, thing like that, right? Where it's just consuming and it's going out at the same time. And so I really knew at that was a point, thank God, that I had that awareness that when I saw this person who loved me as irritating and they were just being their loving, wonderful self, I knew something was wrong with me. And I started to kind of to take some more time. It was really difficult because I was still in the middle of it, but at least to start observing. I don't know if any of you have watched UFC or maybe boxing or something. This especially happens in the UFC. This analogy is kind of the aha moment. Have you ever seen a bout where the fighters just like have just been going 100% the whole time, and the winner then is getting interviewed at the end, and it's the first time that they see themselves on the big screen as they're getting interviewed. And it's the first time they see themselves. And by seeing themselves on the outside, they see how battered they are. And then they realize, wow, I really just went through something. It was kind of like that. It was like I was so focused and in the game for so long that I didn't and I couldn't. There are some stages in life where you just can't. If you tune into your feelings, into what's really going on, you'll break apart and you have to just keep on going. And I know that's not a healthy state of being, but the fact of life is just sometimes you just have to get through stuff, and that's what happens. So I'm here to talk about how to get out of that, because what happens is that you get into a way of being, right? It's just your mode of being, and it's hard to even justify coming out of that. It becomes your mode of being. So, and then I realized too, it's like, okay, Tara, but I don't even have any energy to do this, right? I gotcha. I hear you and I understand. We're getting there, right? So it's like, I didn't know where to begin, but there was something in me that just like felt that I would be guided, and I would just kind of eke along, and first of all, just be open to receiving and observing, and that it would come. And to go back a little bit, this kind of situation, having emotional trauma, was not new to me. I had at least a decade earlier lost my whole family as I knew them, and my family of origin, which was absolutely devastating. So what happens too is like that trauma still I just still hadn't dealt with that trauma. And then having later trauma kind of built upon that, right? The wounds are still there. I hadn't learned how to really deal with them good enough. And so it just made it that much worse. And that's what got me into, around that time I was studying and really appreciated. I still got a lot from it. Wayne Dyer, Carolyn Mace, a lot of the Hay House type of information, yoga, astrology, numerology, herbs, started a business on herbalism, and all of it was helpful to a certain degree. But I didn't realize how much more I actually needed, or maybe I did. Something part of me just knew, like, this is just not getting where I needed to go. Doing gratitude journals, all sorts of stuff like that. But it's kind of like, I use the analogy as I prepared for this podcast as well. It's like when you have a really dirty pan that's just like full of grease, and like grease, not just butter or olive oil, and your regular dish soap is not working. You can wash it 3 times in hot water. It's just not getting to the bottom of it. It's not allowing the true pan, or you in this, or me in this scenario, to sparkle. And that's what these things were like. Reading these books, it was helpful, but it didn't get deep down like I needed it to. So what I'm getting to is what I finally discovered what would help get to the bottom of this. And I would say it, like I said, I was still so engrossed in what needed to be done, 24/7. My husband was still definitely not 100%, and we learned months later how how he was still recovering, how your body, when it goes through a physical trauma, the mind is also really affected. And so I think there was a part of me that intuitively knew that he wasn't 100% yet, even though he's really good at faking it, that I needed to be diligent. I needed to be ready. And I couldn't totally let my guard down. I couldn't totally let myself just be. And so I just noticed something here. So it was hard. I guess what I'm saying, it was really difficult to actually let go, let down, um, relax, and it came to a point where I wouldn't say it was like giving up or giving in, but I would say I finally submitted. I'd say submitted to God, but also like in that, I think submitting also implies trusting and also just knowing that what I was about to do next would would be the guidance that I need. And so what I did, I'd done this before in other books. Well, why not use the Bible, right? Why not take the Bible and get divine guidance at the source? And so I did that. And it's so interesting. It still absolutely fascinates me, the verse that I came to. And I'm going to share that with you right now. So, by the way, this was a Bible that maybe a year earlier I had asked my mother in law to gift me a Bible. I hadn't had a Bible of my own for some reason, and I just wanted it to be something special. And I just got a text message from my good friend saying it's 11:11, sending love. How about that? Okay. Kind of knew I was going to be crying in this one. All right. So this is the Bible verse that I opened to. Behold, the days are coming, says the Lord God, that will send a famine on the land, not a famine of bread, nor a thirst for water, but of hearing the word of the Lord. As Amos 8:11. And boy, was that true. It's amazing when you are receptive like that, what can come back. And it was absolutely true. I was absolutely famished for the word. And I spent days after that just devouring reading the Bible. And since then have had a daily practice devotion each morning. And it has taken, it's done its work on me. It was definitely that it refreshed me, it revived me. I'd like to say that it healed everything all at once, but I think it did something more important, and that is it went deep. Because I had read so many of those other books that I mentioned before, which I think are wonderful, and they really do help, and they helped me to a certain degree. And so many are, like Wayne Dyer and Carolyn Mace in particular, work with the saints and so forth. But it's so interesting when you go to the source. When you go to the source, you go to the well yourself, and you get what you need, but a deeper drink. And so I didn't realize how hungry and how thirsty I was until I started drinking, so to speak, and how much nourishment I needed, and that going to the source was the true nourishment that I needed. And I don't know if, here's what I want to say. I think it's been amazing in the last couple of years. It's been a good year and a half of this practice that it's kind of amazing that it hasn't revealed everything all at once, that I've had big ahas, really big ahas, on a daily, sometimes weekly, sometimes monthly basis. But it's been that deep drink that I've needed rather than that refreshment, like, oh, that was wonderful, I got a quote, right? It's been truly transformational. So getting back to the heart, one of the first things I began to understand was I realized I understood firsthand what the Bible meant by the hardened heart. And it can come upon you. It can happen. And maybe if you're, this wasn't in my notes, but maybe if you're inspired, like, where do I start? I started with Proverbs, which was perfect. It was perfect and so interesting, and especially helpful because of the time, what I was going through at the time in dealing with two people who had falsely accused me, and just where I was at in life. I needed some wisdom myself as well. And what I found is that it was gradually working on me. I equate it to, I think, like I said earlier, that sponge that has just been dried out for years, just totally dried out. Or maybe, I mean, that's the best analogy, because a sponge can be reconstituted. But when a sponge is so dry like that, you put it in water or you pour water on top of it, and it doesn't soak in at all. It takes time. So it's like my heart was like that. Anything else would just pour over the edges. It would be neat and refreshing for a time, but nothing really soaked in. But it absolutely was the word. As soon as I got into that soaked in deep. And what is so meaningful is that if I had kept going down that path of the hardened heart, of feeling frustrated and angry, I would have pushed away so many wonderful people in my life, because they would have been able to sense that. Or at least we couldn't have the genuine, wonderful relationship that we can and do have. And since this is Wifey School and the Wifey Wake Up podcast, especially my husband, I'm so grateful that he's really so consistent with his love. And even at times where I'm not consistent with him, I'm focused on something else. And I'm getting better at this. He's a wonderful example, and I'm working at, for example, just a simple hug in the morning, greeting him at the door, or we're both in the kitchen, and rather than just going about our tasks, to actually pay attention to him. I was going to say one another, but he's really good at doing that with him. Sometimes too much. I'm like, I need to just do the dishes. And, but it's a wonderful lesson for me that, we don't know how much time we have together on this earth, and what a blessing it is to have those in our life who do love us and do show us love. And if we're not able to feel that, if we're not able to receive that, that's a sign to look inwards, to go within, and to really do some work. Because I really don't believe that we're here to not experience. I believe that we're here to experience love on earth and give love as a part of that. And if we're not able to tap into that, I think we're really missing out on something. I think there is something greater. There's a greater reason there's a greater reason why we seek love from another person. I don't think it's just a vanity. I don't think it's just narcissism. I think there's something like seeking love is like wanting to experience heaven on earth. And to be loved, to be genuinely loved, is an absolute blessing. And I think that's why it hurts so much when someone shows a non-loving act or words towards us. And so it's been a couple of years now since I've been in this recovery mode, and I definitely see differently. I can see more clearly what led me to burnout, to frustration, and why I was so angry. And more importantly, I can discern, more readily which path I'm going to take. And is that path one of healing, of love, or is it the old self that leads to that hardened and even broken heart? And broken heart because not just because of what other people are doing, but how I'm trying to hold it all together, but how I was allowing myself to be with myself. So there's so many realizations that it'll have to be multiple podcasts, but I'm just going to list a few here. I've written all this out, and I usually post what I write in preparation for this podcast below in the description, but this was too long. And so obviously I have a lot, to share on this. Yeah. I can hear what you're saying, Pablo. That's definitely the case for a number of people, and that's definitely the message here, is how to observe yourself as a woman. Let's see. So that's a great segue too. I should probably tell you, Pablo says men are simple. Females live drama, trauma, and complicating everyone's lives. Peace out. And I can, if I'm in my own experience, but I kind of step out of it, I think I can understand what you're saying. And it is a challenge to not keep living your own trauma and then perpetuating it. And that was a cycle that I had to learn for myself. But maybe this is helpful for someone out there too, because I think women do get that label that they're the ones creating the trauma and the drama, but that's not everybody. For me, I tended to turn it inward, and so I was taking it out on myself. But that's when it just takes one fine moment where it can come out outwardly, and I think we all hopefully have that opportunity where we have a big aha realization where it's like, oh no, this is not serving me. This is not serving those around me. This is actually not leading to the life that I say or I think that I want. And I'm going to list off some of the realizations. Again, each of these can be their own podcast in and of itself. But maybe some of these realizations might help someone before you start heading further down the path, like where I got. So what I realized is that I had some desires, and really unquenchable desires, that were exhausting me. So I had this vision of life where I thought I would be, what I thought I should have. And the thing is, it's the proverbial, you never have enough. You get to one point and then it is not enough, or you got there, you don't really celebrate, and you move on to the next one. And I realized that I was exhausting myself in that process. Also, I know I truly experienced evil in my life, and that when you experience evil, if you also don't have God in your life, the evil can overcome you. And I'll tell you, if I had heard this a couple of years ago, maybe 3 years ago, I'd be like, okay, great, another Bible thumper and so forth. But when you live it, when you experience it, you know how true it is. That I think the only way that I was able to overcome evil, the effects of evil, was with the effects of God. So again, these are the realizations that I have had in the last couple of years. Definitely not all of them, but again, hopefully they could be podcasts in and of themselves. And hopefully, if you're already headed down this path, or you're feeling that ache in your heart, that you can stop yourself sooner down the road. What I also realized and was able to do is to actually be present in the moment, and to be content, and to even be grateful, even through all sorts of gratitude exercises, gratitude books, yoga classes and so forth. For some reason, I was not able to tap into really being present, being content, and being grateful. And that's something that I've definitely been able to do more than before recently. Also, another big aha, again, this is a whole podcast, but I realized that I was putting God-sized problems onto my husband, and that I was allowing myself to be upset, frustrated, angry when these things wouldn't happen. And this was a huge aha, because I was totally putting things out of order. Why should I expect my husband to perform like God? I mean, even though, he's really good at, making himself look awesome, and I think he's absolutely incredible, I really had to put things in the correct order and put the right expectations on God, and really just love and appreciate my husband for who he is. And I could say so much more, but we'll go into that some other time. I also realized that I was prioritizing things over people. And I think as a woman, for me, this was especially difficult because deep down I knew I wanted to prioritize people, but I had put things into action in my life, primarily business, and things that just had to be done. Like I said, business had to be done. My husband was still recovering, and things just had to be done. But I had to shift myself, and I'm still working on this. Had to shift myself from focusing on things to focusing on people. And that is even true in business. So rather than this newsletter needs to go out, this advertisement needs to go out, is now let's think about the people in this. This is not just something to do. There's always a person, and there's always people behind this. So make sure to think about them. And again, these are things that I've realized over the last couple of years in this practice. These are the big ahas that really started healing my heart, because I had to get to the bottom of what was really causing that frustration and anger and tension and pain that I was causing myself because I was staying in a pattern. Okay. And then that for my own well-being and that of my marriage and all that depends on us, I needed to get back to my feminine energy. And I had to learn how to do this even more when the masculine energy seemed called for. So for example, in business, and I'm still working on figuring this out. Fortunately, I'm in a business that's we do health and wellness education, primarily herbalism and more naturopathy oriented at the Matthew Wood Institute of Herbalism. Fortunately, it's more feminine in a way because it's caregiving and educating and centered around that. But still, there's so much that goes on in business and making decisions and moving forward on things and meeting deadlines that is very masculine oriented. And so I'm still working on how do I be feminine still in that role? Because it was for a number of years, and during those times where I just had to get stuff done, that the masculine energy really came out and was really predominant. And so that has been something I still am really working on. There's really so much more. Those were just 6, but there are so many more of these big ahas that really helped me to start healing my heart and healing it on a different level. Thank you very much, Hayala. It's really bubbling up today. So the biggest thing is I believe that when we experience pain, when we experience trauma, when someone is acting out in those ways, it doesn't come from love. It's ironic. Some people will say, well, I'm doing this because I love you. But you're like, I don't feel the love. but we need some level of healing. And a lot of times, I think we don't know how to tap into that healing, especially when you're just caught up in life. And for you, it may be being out in nature. I'm sharing my experience because that might be the thing that helps you discover what is the healing balm for you. Okay. To conclude, I'd like to say the difference that I feel is before I felt constant tension. Literally, almost forgot to mention this. That was a time where I was previously very athletic for me. I did not grow up naturally athletic, but I had accomplished a level of athleticism for me prior to all this that was a great accomplishment. And primarily that showed in mountain biking. My husband had spent years training me and preparing me to do single track mountain biking. And locally, at least here in Minnesota, which we don't have mountains, but we have some amazing hills. And especially if you go north to Duluth, there's some really rocky, amazing areas. At least locally, I'm a solid intermediate. Let's just say across the board. Locally, I can do black diamond tracks. So just kind of give you some perspective. Now, it is on an e-bike, but you still have to have some level of skill to do it. But I wouldn't be able to do it without an e-bike. And that was a huge accomplishment for me. I mean, I have pictures from that day where I'm like, yeah, I can see my arms. I felt very together. And just within a year or two, I went from feeling that good to I didn't even dare go out on the mountain biking track because I felt that I was going to injure my neck. It was already to the point where I could barely turn my neck, or my head, that is, a couple inches from center. And because my neck and my shoulders hurt so much. And of course, there's posture, being at the desk, but there's just all that tension. And that relates to the heart area. It's all connected, right? Energetically and physically. And so I illustrate this because I think it helps to give a snapshot of a before and after. I would have chest pains, and probably the kind as a woman you don't want to have, where they say men have heart attacks that are abrupt, and women are just having that general tension. Definitely experience that. And just generally feeling really consistently frustrated and angry and upset. And I knew I didn't want to feel like that. And I knew I had to, even though I didn't feel like I had the time or the energy to kind of crawl out of that state of being, I knew for my own well-being, at least, if not then for the well-being of others, that I had to change that. And as for a contrast, where I feel today, just last week was out on the mountain biking track and did one of the obstacles that I could do probably 3 years ago. And it was a huge accomplishment. And it just felt absolutely amazing to feel that not only am I not concerned anymore about injuring myself because I already had an existing injury or tension at least, but that I felt fully healed, that I felt that I had the energy and the wherewithal and even just the mental clarity to be out on the track and not be thinking about what happened with so-and-so or what happened or all the scenarios, right? To be able to think clearly, to be able to let go and have fun. I also definitely feel much more at peace. By at peace, I mean that, like, I can be present in the moment, and that I'm no longer thinking about all the work that has to get done, which that took a long time. Actually, that's just been very recent. I'm no longer constantly worried. And, it's one of those things you don't realize how deep you are into it until, you open your eyes and you realize it. I'd say another big aha and a big difference is not being irritated by the people around me just for simple things, right? I mean, there can be the regular things like someone's chewing with their mouth open and making a lot of noise. That's still kind of annoying. But I just mean like for them being their regular selves, where that was the big eye opener for me earlier. This is a wonderful accomplishment to see, definitely where I am today. And I think most of all is properly placing my thoughts, concerns, and faith in God, so then I can also put the proper trust and faith in my husband. And so the things that are for God, and then the level of things that are for my husband are for my husband. And when it's so interesting to me, I wonder if other people experience this as well, is just the way I'll say it, that I was losing trust and faith in my husband, I think, because I was putting the God-sized trust and faith on him and expecting too much out of him. Yeah, this will be available. If you go to wifeyschool.us, it'll lead to my YouTube channel. It might be easier to find there also, but I'll leave it up on Facebook as well. Have a wonderful day. And so I think it's properly placing those proper levels of expectations, right? And what I found is where I was increasingly not trusting my husband, it wasn't him that was not trustworthy. It was I was putting too big of expectation on him, and it wasn't appropriate. And a part of me knew that. And so it came through as not trusting, whereas it was just too big of an expectation. I hope that makes sense. So most of all, I feel like I can... He's trying to call me. All these... Usually I do this really early in the morning, so I'm not getting any notifications. All right, lastly, most of all, I feel like I can truly love again. And I still feel like I'm just scratching the surface. This is just the beginning. I feel like there's so much more to experience. But I feel like at least I'm started on the path, and I feel like more of my own genuine self again. And I feel like I am living more realistically in a way. And that is not only better for me, but it's better for those around me as well. I think this is how we're supposed to live. So most of all, of course, I want to thank God for this guidance. I thank my husband for his consistent love and his example in this way also, that even when I was going through times where I wasn't giving him the love and attention that he really needed at that time, because he was recovering from a life-threatening situation, that he still was consistent with me. And through that example, I was able to get to this point, at least to have these realizations, to learn and to more genuinely love, I believe, and am still learning. So I've heard from a few of you in the chat, would love to hear more. How does this resonate with you? I know I have some big things like this on my heart that will be coming out more and more here. And how does it resonate with you? Because I do really believe that, I think you could hear this in the psychological realm, right? Like, heal yourself so you can be loving and heal others. But there's so much more to it, right? It's like, how do you get into it? So if you've been through that, how did you get through it? And what's your healing balm? Maybe what was your experience that you had to get through? So I am here every morning except for Sundays at around sunrise. After I get all my inspiration, I come here, share with you. And this is typically for Wifey Wake Up at wifeyschool.us. But today's topic was even broader. I think it applies to so many other situations and relationships. So I wanted to share more broadly today. And I hope this inspires and touches the part of you that needed it most, and that you all have a wonderful day. Take care.